The massive space station Zephyria Prime hung in the void like a glittering jewel against the starfield. Its circular structure stretched for miles in every direction, with docking bays that could accommodate ships from dozens of different species. The station served one purpose above all others: to host the galaxy's most prestigious gladiatorial tournament where the finest warriors from across known space came to prove their worth. Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small viewport. In his cell, watching the endless stream of alien vessels arriving for the games. 3 days ago he had been a simple patrol officer aboard the Earth Defense Force cruiser Valiant, checking shipping lanes near the outer colonies. Now he was a prisoner, captured when his ship had stumbled into a Krillian raiding party that had been hunting for fresh entertainment. The Krillians were reptilian beings with scales that shimmered like polished metal and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. They stood nearly 8 feet tall and possessed strength that could crush human bones with ease. Their empire controlled a significant portion of the galaxy's eastern spiral arm, and they were known for their military prowess and their love of combat sports. To them, capturing a human was like finding an exotic pet that might provide a few moments of amusement before inevitably being destroyed. Jake's cellmate was a Drovian named Clix, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. Clix had been captured from a mining colony and spoke basic well enough to explain the situation. "The arena is the greatest honor in the galaxy," Clix buzzed through his translator device. "Warriors come from every species to compete. The winner gains fame and riches beyond imagination." "What about the losers?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "There are no losers who live to tell about it," Clix replied matter-of-factly. "Combat is to the death or until one fighter yields. Most choose death over the shame of surrender." Jake nodded grimly. He had heard rumors about the galactic arena system during his military training, but Earth was considered too primitive and weak to ever receive an official invitation. The fact that he was here at all was probably seen as a joke by the other species. The cell door slid open with a harsh metallic sound, and 2 Krillian guards entered. They wore ceremonial armor decorated with the symbols of their victories, and their weapons hummed with energy. "Human," one of them hissed in accented basic, "you fight today. Try not to die too quickly. The crowd enjoys a good show." They escorted Jake through corridors filled with beings he had never seen before. There were the blue-skinned Ashanti with their elegant features and telepathic abilities, the massive Bruthan with their natural armor plating, and dozens of other species that represented the diversity of galactic civilization. All of them stopped to stare at Jake as he passed, some with curiosity, others with obvious amusement. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering. The fighting pit was surrounded by energy barriers that could contain even the most powerful weapons, while tiered seating rose in all directions to accommodate over 1 million spectators. Holographic displays showed close-up views of the action, and the air buzzed with the excited chatter of a dozen different languages. In the VIP section, Commander Zara Veltith of the Ashanti Coalition watched the proceedings with keen interest. She was tall and graceful, with the distinctive blue skin of her people and silver hair that fell in elaborate braids. Her uniform bore the insignia of a high-ranking military officer, and her presence commanded respect from those around her. Zara had been studying humans for months through intercepted communications and intelligence reports. While most species dismissed them as primitive and emotionally unstable, she had seen something in their military records that intrigued her. Humans had a remarkable ability to adapt to impossible situations and find victory where none should exist. They were also capable of forming bonds across species lines in ways that other races found difficult to understand. When Jake was brought into the arena, Zara leaned forward in her seat. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps in his mid-20s, with brown hair and steady gray eyes that showed no fear despite the obvious danger. He moved with the controlled confidence of a trained soldier, and she could see the intelligence in his gaze as he studied his surroundings. The crowd's reaction was immediate and predictable. Laughter echoed through the arena as beings pointed at the human and made jokes about his small size and lack of natural weapons. Betting odds appeared on the displays, showing Jake as a massive underdog against whatever opponent would be chosen for him. Lord Vextar the Destroyer, the reigning champion, sat in his place of honor and watched with cold reptilian eyes. He was a Krillian who had never lost a match in over 50 battles, and his reputation for brutality was legendary throughout the galaxy. To him, the human represented nothing more than a brief warm-up before the real matches began, the arena. Announcer's voice boomed across the stadium in multiple languages simultaneously. Honored guests, we present today's opening entertainment. A primitive human from the Outer Rim will face a champion of the Bruthan Empire in single combat. As the words echoed through the arena, Zara made a decision that would change everything. She stood slowly, her movement drawing the attention of every being in the VIP section. Her voice carried clearly through the sudden silence, enhanced by the arena's acoustics and translation systems. I claim this warrior, she declared, her words formal and binding according to ancient galactic law. He belongs to me. The arena fell completely silent for a moment before erupting in shocked murmurs and outright gasps. According to the old codes, when a military commander claimed a gladiator, they were binding their honor to that fighter's performance. If the warrior succeeded, the commander gained prestige and influence. If the warrior failed, the commander shared in the shame. For Zara to claim a human warrior was unprecedented and seemingly suicidal. Her own people looked at her with expressions of shock and concern, while representatives from other species whispered among themselves about the implications of such a bold move. Jake heard the declaration through his translator and looked up at the VIP section. Even from this distance, he could see the regal bearing of the Ashanti commander who had just tied her fate to his. He did not know why she had made such a choice, but he understood the weight of it. Someone believed in him when no one else did. The arena preparations continued around them, but everything had changed. This was no longer just about survival or entertainment. It had become a test of human potential in front of the entire galaxy, with the honor of both species hanging in the balance. The massive gates at the far end of the arena began to open with a deep rumbling sound that shook the entire structure. Jake felt his heart rate increase as he watched the darkness beyond the entrance, knowing that whatever emerged would be designed to kill him as quickly and brutally as possible. The crowd's excitement grew louder with each passing second, their bloodthirsty cheers echoing off the curved walls of the stadium. From the shadows stepped a creature that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. The Bruthan warrior stood nearly 10 feet tall, its natural armor plating gleaming under the arena lights like polished obsidian. 4 massive arms ended in claws that could shred steel, and its broad chest rose and fell with each breath like a biological engine of destruction. The creature's head was elongated and predatory, with rows of sharp teeth visible. When it opened its mouth to roar at the crowd, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena with obvious excitement. Behold Grimlock the Bone Crusher, champion of the Bruthan homeworld and veteran of 37 arena victories. His opponent is the human Jake Morrison, representing the primitive species from the Outer Rim territories. Jake had faced dangerous enemies before during his military service, but nothing like this. The Bruthan was not just larger and stronger than any human, it was also a trained killer with decades of combat experience. The betting odds on the displays shifted even further against him, with some bookmakers offering 1,000-to-1 payouts for anyone foolish enough to wager on the human dot in the VIP section. Zara watched with intense focus as Jake began to move around the arena perimeter. She could see his tactical mind working, studying the environment and his opponent with the methodical approach of a trained soldier. The arena floor was covered with sand and scattered with obstacles, broken pillars, weapon racks, and elevated platforms that could provide either advantage or trap, depending on how they were used. Other spectators in the VIP section were already making cruel jokes about Zara's decision to claim the human warrior. Lord Kethron of the Draconian Empire leaned over with a mocking smile. Perhaps you should have chosen a more promising species, Commander. I hear humans are excellent at running away from danger, Zara ignored the comment and focused on Jake's movements. She had studied human military tactics extensively, and she recognized the careful way he was positioning himself. Unlike the Bruthan, who stood in the center of the arena flexing his massive muscles for the crowd's entertainment, Jake was thinking several moves ahead. The starting bell rang with a sound like thunder, and Grimlock immediately charged forward with surprising speed for such a massive creature. His forearms spread wide as he attempted to grab Jake in a crushing embrace that would end the fight in seconds. The crowd roared its approval, expecting to see the human torn apart in moments, but Jake was no longer where the Bruthan expected him to be. At the last possible second, he dove to the side and rolled behind one of the broken pillars. Grimlock's momentum carried him past the obstacle, and his claws scraped against stone instead of flesh. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmurs as the human reappeared on the other side of the pillar, now holding a discarded weapon from one of the racks. The weapon was a Krillian energy blade, designed for beings much larger than humans, but Jake adapted quickly to its weight and balance. He activated the weapon's power core and felt the familiar hum of energy coursing through the metal. It was not so different from the plasma swords used by Earth's special forces. Though the alien design required some adjustment, Grimlock turned with a frustrated roar and charged again, this time swinging his massive fists in wide arcs that could shatter bone. Jake ducked under the first swing and slashed at the Bruthan's exposed flank, but the energy blade barely scratched the creature's natural armor. The crowd laughed at the ineffective attack, but Jake was learning valuable information about his opponent's defenses. The two fighters circled each other warily, and Jake began to notice patterns in the Bruthan's movements. Despite his size and strength, Grimlock had predictable habits developed through decades of fighting smaller, weaker opponents. He always led with his upper right arm, always pivoted on his left foot, and always paused for a split second before launching his most devastating attacks. Zara found herself holding her breath as she watched Jake's strategy unfold. The human was not trying to match the Bruthan's strength, which would have been suicide. Instead, he was using his opponent's size and overconfidence against him. Every dodge, every feint, every seemingly desperate scramble was actually part of a larger plan. The turning point came when Grimlock grew tired of the extended fight and decided to end it with a killing blow. He raised all four arms above his head and brought them down in a crushing attack that would have flattened any normal opponent. But Jake had been waiting for exactly this moment. He rolled forward between the Bruthan's legs and drove his energy blade upward into the one spot where the creature's armor was weakest. The blade found its mark in the soft joint where the Bruthan's leg connected to his torso. Grimlock howled in pain and stumbled, his massive weight working against him as he struggled to maintain balance. Jake pressed his advantage, staying close to his opponent's body where the creature's long arms could not reach him effectively. What followed was not a graceful display of swordsmanship, but a brutal and desperate fight for survival. Jake used every dirty trick he had learned in military training, every psychological warfare tactic, every advantage he could find. When Grimlock tried to grab him, Jake targeted the creature's eyes with quick jabs. When the Bruthan attempted to use his superior reach, Jake moved in close and attacked vulnerable joints. The crowd's laughter had long since died away, replaced by stunned silence as they watched the impossible unfold. The human was not just surviving against the Bruthan champion, he was actually winning. Blood flowed from dozens of small wounds that Jake had inflicted with surgical precision, and Grimlock's movements were becoming slower and more labored. The final moment came when Grimlock made one last desperate lunge. Jake sidestepped the attack and brought his energy blade down in a perfect arc that severed the tendons in the Bruthan's ankle. The massive creature crashed to the arena floor, unable to stand, and Jake stood over him with the blade pointed at his throat. The arena fell completely silent as Jake looked up at the crowd, then at the defeated Bruthan. Instead of delivering the killing blow that tradition demanded, he stepped back and deactivated his weapon. Grimlock looked up at him with something like respect in his alien eyes before nodding his surrender. The crowd erupted in chaos as the impossible became reality. The human had won. The arena medics rushed onto the sand to tend to both fighters, their advanced healing technology working quickly to repair the damage from the brutal combat. Jake sat on a medical platform as alien doctors scanned his injuries with devices that hummed and glowed with soft blue light. His body ached from a dozen different impacts, but his spirit felt stronger than ever before. The crowd was still buzzing with excitement and disbelief over what they had witnessed. Betting terminals throughout the station were processing massive payouts to the few gamblers who had been foolish enough to wager on the human. News feeds were already spreading the story across the galaxy, with headlines proclaiming the impossible victory of a primitive species over one of the arena's established champions. In the VIP section, Zara felt a mixture of pride and relief wash over her. She had gambled everything on her instincts about human potential, and Jake had proven her right in the most spectacular way possible. The other military commanders around her were looking at her with new respect, though she could also sense the uncertainty in their minds about what this victory might mean for the established order. Lord Kethron of the Draconian Empire approached her with a formal bow. "Commander Veltith, your human warrior has provided quite the entertainment. Perhaps there is more to this species than we previously understood." Zara nodded graciously but kept her expression neutral. "The galaxy has much to learn about humanity, Lord Kethron. This is only the beginning." Meanwhile, Jake was escorted to a private recovery chamber where he could rest between matches. The room was spartanly furnished but comfortable, with a bed designed for humanoid physiology and a small viewport that showed the stars beyond the station. He was surprised when the door chimed and Zara entered, her blue skin seeming to glow in the artificial lighting. "You fought well, Jake Morrison," she said, using his full name with careful pronunciation. "Your victory has sent ripples through the galactic community that will be felt for years to come." Jake stood respectfully, though his muscles protested the movement. "I have you to thank for believing in me when no one else would. Why did you claim me as your warrior?" Zara studied his face carefully, her telepathic abilities allowing her to sense the genuine curiosity behind his question. "Because I have been watching your species for some time, and I believe you possess qualities that the galaxy desperately needs. You do not fight for glory or conquest, but for survival and the protection of others. That is the mark of a true warrior." She moved to the viewport and gazed out at the stars. "The galaxy has grown stagnant, Jake. The same species have held power for centuries, fighting the same battles over and over again. Your people represent something new, something that could change everything." Jake joined her at the viewport, his mind racing with the implications of her words. "What happens next? I assume there will be more fights." "Yes," Zara replied. "Your next opponent will be chosen specifically to end your winning streak. The established powers cannot allow a human to continue succeeding, as it would undermine their own authority. They will send their best against you." As if summoned by her words, a holographic display materialized in the center of the room. The image showed a towering Krillian warrior with scales that gleamed like polished metal and eyes that burned with inner fire. Ritual scars covered his arms and chest, each one representing a defeated opponent. "Sektar the Relentless," Zara sighed quietly. "He has never lost a match in over 40 battles. His fighting style is based on overwhelming aggression and superior technology. Where Grimlock relied on brute strength, Sektar combined speed, skill, and advanced weapons." Jake studied the hologram carefully, already beginning to analyze his next opponent's strengths and weaknesses. "What can you tell me about Krillian fighting techniques?" Zara glanced around the room to ensure they were not being monitored, then activated a privacy field that would block both electronic surveillance and telepathic intrusion. "What I'm about to tell you could cost me my position if discovered. Krillian warriors are trained from birth to fight with honor and tradition. They have specific patterns and rituals that govern their combat style." She began to explain the intricacies of Krillian martial arts, their preferred weapons, and the psychological tactics they employed to intimidate opponents. Jake listened intently, his military training helping him process the information and develop countermeasures. "The most important thing to understand," Zara continued, is that Krillians fight with their emotions as much as their weapons. They draw strength from their anger and pride, but this can also be turned against them if you know how to manipulate their reactions. The next morning, Jake was brought back to the arena for his second match. The crowd was much larger than before, with beings from dozens of species traveling to witness the human who had shocked the galaxy. The betting odds were still heavily against him, but not as overwhelming as they had been for his first fight. Sektar entered the arena with the confident stride of a warrior who had never known defeat. His armor was a masterwork of Krillian technology, providing both protection and enhanced strength. The weapon in his hands was a plasma spear that could cut through most known materials, and his reptilian features were set in an expression of cold determination. The arena announcer's voice boomed across the stadium. Today we witness a battle between experience and potential, between the proven strength of the Krillian Empire and the surprising resilience of humanity. Jake felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him from all sides. This fight would determine whether his previous victory had been a fluke or the beginning of something greater. He thought about Zara's words about the galaxy needing change, about the stagnation that had settled over the established powers. The starting bell rang, and Sektar immediately went on the offensive. His plasma spear moved in precise patterns that had been perfected over generations of Krillian warriors. Each strike was calculated to exploit the weaknesses of his opponent while maintaining perfect defensive positioning, but Jake had been expecting this approach. Instead of trying to match the Krillians' technical skill, he began to implement the psychological warfare tactics that Zara had taught him. He deliberately stumbled at key moments, making himself appear weaker than he actually was. He allowed Sektar to score minor hits that looked more serious than they were. The crowd began to murmur that the human's first victory had indeed been a fluke. Even some of Jake's newfound supporters started to doubt whether he could repeat his previous performance against a more skilled opponent, but Jake was executing a carefully planned strategy. With each apparent mistake, he was studying Sektar's reactions and responses. He was learning the rhythm of the Krillians' attacks and the subtle tells that preceded each movement. Most importantly, he was gradually building his opponent's confidence. To a dangerous level, the turning point came when Sektar grew overconfident and attempted to end the fight with a spectacular finishing move. Jake had been waiting for exactly this moment, and he used the Krillians' own momentum against him in a move that sent the plasma spear flying across the arena. What followed was a brutal hand-to-hand combat that tested both fighters to their absolute limits. Jake's human endurance and adaptability proved to be the deciding factors as Sektar's initial burst of energy began to fade. In the end, Jake stood victorious once again, and the galaxy took notice that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The recovery chamber had become Jake's temporary home between matches, and he was growing accustomed to the routine of medical treatment and preparation for the next battle. His body was adapting to the punishment of arena combat, becoming stronger and more resilient with each passing day. The alien medical technology was remarkable, healing wounds that would have taken weeks to recover from using human medicine. Zara visited him regularly now, their conversations ranging from combat tactics to discussions about their respective cultures. Jake found himself looking forward to these meetings more than he cared to admit. There was something about the Ashante commander that put him at ease, despite the obvious differences between their species. "Your people fascinate me," Zara said during one of their evening talks. "I have been studying the recordings of your fights, and I see something that other species lack. You adapt not just your tactics, but your entire approach to each new challenge. Most warriors rely on their natural abilities or their training, but humans seem to reinvent themselves with each battle." Jake considered her words carefully. "Maybe that's because we don't have natural weapons or armor like the other species. We've always had to be creative to survive. On Earth, humans had to compete with larger, stronger predators, so we learned to use our minds instead of our muscles." "That may be the key to your success," Zara replied. "The galaxy has forgotten how to adapt. We have become comfortable with our established ways, and that comfort has made us weak. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communication system. A holographic display materialized, showing the stern face of General Taishran, the supreme commander of the Ashanti military forces. His expression was grave as he addressed Zara. "Commander Veltith, I have received concerning reports about your involvement with the human gladiator. The Council of Elders has requested that you explain your actions at the earliest opportunity." Zara straightened to attention. "General, I am prepared to defend my decisions before the Council. The human warrior has proven himself worthy of our respect and attention." "That may be true," the general replied, "but your public claim of ownership has created diplomatic complications. Several species are viewing your actions as an attempt to establish human Ashanti military cooperation. The political implications are significant." Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the broader consequences of his arena victories. He had been so focused on survival and combat that he had not fully considered how his success might affect interspecies relations. "General," Zara said firmly, "I believe this human and his species represent an opportunity for positive change in our galaxy. If my actions have political implications, then perhaps it is time for our politics to evolve." The general's expression softened slightly. "I have known you since you were a young officer, Zara. Your instincts have always been sound, but this situation requires careful handling. The Council will expect a full explanation of your intentions." After the communication ended, Jake looked at Zara with newfound understanding. "You're risking your career for me, aren't you?" "I am risking my career for what you represent," she corrected. "Your victories have shown the galaxy that there are other ways to achieve success. The established powers are threatened by this, and they will do everything possible to maintain their dominance." The next few days brought a steady stream of visitors to the recovery chamber. Military attaches from various species came to observe Jake and ask questions about human capabilities. Scientists requested biological samples to study human physiology. Diplomatic representatives made subtle inquiries about Earth's military potential and political structure. Jake handled these interactions with the same tactical thinking he applied to combat. He revealed enough information to satisfy curiosity, while being careful not to expose any strategic weaknesses that could be used against humanity. The experience was exhausting in its own way, requiring constant mental vigilance. The most significant visitor was Ambassador Kreltok of the Galactic Council, an ancient being whose species had been instrumental in establishing the current political order. His presence in the recovery chamber was both an honor and a warning. "Young human," the ambassador said in a voice that carried the weight of centuries, "your victories have created ripples that extend far beyond this arena. Some view you as a symbol of hope, while others see you as a threat to stability. How do you view yourself?" Jake met the ambassador's gaze steadily. "I see myself as a soldier doing his duty, sir. I fight not for personal glory, but because I was placed in a situation where fighting was necessary for survival." "And what of your species? Do humans seek to challenge the established order of galactic civilization?" "Humans seek to find their place in the galaxy," Jake replied carefully. "We hope to contribute to the greater good while maintaining our own identity and values." The ambassador nodded slowly. "Wisdom beyond your years, young warrior. Remember that actions have consequences that extend far beyond the individual. Your next opponent will be chosen with those consequences in mind." As the political pressure mounted, Jake found himself drawn closer to Zara. Their conversations became more personal, moving beyond military strategy to discuss their hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. Jake learned about Ashanti culture, their emphasis on honor and duty, and their long history of military excellence. Zara shared her own struggles with command, responsibility, and the weight of making decisions that affected entire civilizations. She spoke about her belief that the galaxy needed new perspectives and fresh approaches to old problems. "My people have a saying," she told him one evening as they watched the stars through the viewport. "The strongest metal is forged in the hottest fire. Perhaps humans are that metal, and these battles are the fire that will shape your species' destiny." Jake felt the truth of her words resonate within him. Each victory had changed him, made him stronger and more confident, but also more aware of the responsibilities that came with success. He was no longer just fighting for his own survival, but for the future of human-alien relations. The bond between them deepened with each passing day. Transcending the differences in their species and backgrounds, they found common ground in their shared values of honor, duty, and the belief that individuals could make a difference in the course of history. When the announcement came for Jake's next match, the opponent was revealed to be something unprecedented. The Arena Masters had decided to test him against multiple opponents simultaneously, breaking with traditional single combat rules. 3 warriors from different species would face him together in a battle that would determine whether his previous victories had been skill or luck. As Jake prepared for what might be his final battle, he drew strength from Zara's unwavering support and the knowledge that he was fighting for something greater than himself. The galaxy was watching, and the future of human-alien relations hung in the balance. The arena had never seen a crowd this large before. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy filled the massive stadium, with millions more watching through holographic broadcasts across countless worlds. The stakes of this final match had grown far beyond simple entertainment, becoming a test that would determine humanity's place in galactic civilization. Jake stood in the preparation chamber, checking his equipment one last time. The Arena Masters had allowed him to choose from a selection of weapons, and he had selected a combination of human military gear and alien technology that felt comfortable in his hands. The weight of expectation pressed down on him like a physical force, but his mind remained clear and focused. Zara entered the chamber with a formal escort of Ashanti guards, her military uniform bearing new insignia that Jake did not recognize. Her expression was serious but confident as she approached him. "The Council of Elders has made their decision," she said without preamble. "If you win this match, they will officially recognize Earth as a candidate for membership in the Galactic Coalition. If you lose, humanity will be classified as a protected species under alien oversight." Jake felt the full weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He was no longer fighting just for his own survival, but for the freedom and independence of his entire species. The thought was both terrifying and inspiring. "There is something else you should know," Zara continued. "Your final opponent is not just any warrior. The Arena Masters have chosen Vexstar the Destroyer himself." The name sent a chill through Jake's body. Vexstar was the reigning champion, the Krillian warrior who had never lost a battle in over 50 matches. He was considered the greatest gladiator in galactic history, a living legend whose reputation for brutality was matched only by his tactical brilliance. "He accepted the challenge personally," Zara explained. "The Krillian Empire sees your victories as a threat to their military superiority. Vexstar volunteered to face you to prove that human success has been nothing more than luck and favorable circumstances." Jake nodded slowly, his mind already beginning to analyze this new challenge. "What can you tell me about his fighting style?" "Vexstar is different from your previous opponents. He does not rely on brute strength or simple aggression. He is a master strategist who studies his enemies carefully and exploits their weaknesses with surgical precision. He has defeated warriors from every major species, and he learns from each victory." The warning bells began to sound throughout the station, signaling that the final match was about to begin. Jake took a deep breath and turned to face Zara, knowing that this might be the last time they spoke. "Whatever happens in there," he said quietly, "I want you to know that meeting you has changed my life. You believed in me when no one else would, and that belief gave me the strength to achieve things I never thought possible." Zara stepped closer, her blue eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and concern. "You have already achieved the impossible, Jake Morrison. You have shown the galaxy that humanity deserves respect and recognition. Win or lose, you have changed the course of history." The arena gates opened and Jake walked onto the sand to face his destiny. The crowd's roar was deafening, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the space station. Holographic displays showed his image alongside statistics from his previous victories, while commentators in dozens of languages provided analysis and speculation. From the opposite gate emerged Vextar the Destroyer, and Jake understood immediately why this warrior had never been defeated. The Krillian moved with the fluid grace of a predator, every step calculated and purposeful. His armor was a masterwork of engineering that enhanced his natural abilities while providing maximum protection. The weapons in his hands hummed with energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate, but it was Vextar's eyes that truly marked him as different from Jake's previous opponents. There was intelligence there, a cold and calculating mind that had studied every aspect of human combat performance. This would not be a battle won through simple tricks or psychological manipulation, the arena announcer's voice echoed across the stadium. Beings of the galaxy witness history in the making. The human Jake Morrison faces the legendary Vextar the Destroyer in single combat that will determine the fate of two civilizations. The starting bell rang and both warriors began to circle each other warily. Vextar made no immediate aggressive moves, instead studying Jake's stance and movement patterns with the patience of a master predator. Jake realized that everything he had learned in his previous fights would be useless here, as Vextar had undoubtedly analyzed recordings of those battles. The first exchange came when Vextar feinted left and struck right with lightning speed. Jake barely managed to deflect the attack, feeling the power behind the blow through his weapon. The Krillian's strength was overwhelming, but his technique was perfect, leaving no openings for counterattack. What followed was the most brutal and intense combat Jake had ever experienced. Vextar fought with the accumulated wisdom of dozens of victories, adapting his tactics moment by moment to counter Jake's responses. Every time Jake tried to employ a strategy that had worked before, the Krillian was ready with a perfect counter. But as the battle progressed, Jake began to realize something that gave him hope. Vextar was fighting like the warrior he had always been, relying on the techniques and approaches that had brought him victory after victory. Jake, however, was becoming something new with each exchange, adapting and evolving in real time. The turning point came when Jake stopped trying to defeat Vextar using conventional tactics and instead began to fight like a human. He used his emotional connection to Zara and his people as a source of strength, drawing on reserves of determination that his opponent could not understand or predict. In the final moments of the battle, when both warriors were exhausted and wounded, Jake made a choice that shocked everyone watching. Instead of going for a killing blow when he had the chance, he offered Vextar his hand in a gesture of respect and friendship. The gesture confused and disarmed the Krillian warrior more effectively than any weapon could have. Vextar looked into Jake's eyes and saw something he had never encountered before, a warrior who fought not for domination, but for understanding and cooperation. "You fight for others," Vextar said in perfect basic, his weapon lowering. "You are stronger than I am." The arena fell silent as the legendary champion yielded the match to the human warrior. Jake had won not through superior combat skills, but by demonstrating the qualities that made humanity unique: compassion, cooperation, and the ability to see enemies as potential allies. As Jake stood victorious in the center of the arena, Zara's voice carried clearly through the silence. "He belongs to me," she repeated, but now the words carried a different meaning. They spoke of partnership, of mutual respect, and of a future where humans and aliens could work together as equals. The galaxy would never be the same.